Aloha, everyone, and welcome to Chesapeake Movies and More. And now it's time for Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars. Okay, so yeah, I did go out to see the latest Star Wars movie, the last in the Skywalker Saga, The Rise of Skywalker, yesterday. And I had a blast. It was a lot of fun. It's a pretty awesome movie, it is. Um, there was a real good like Flash Gordon feel, like old sci-fi serial feel, which is what like inspired Star Wars to begin with. It had a lot of that. We kind of got to see like the character dynamics of like the whole like group of the next generation of Star Wars, which like Rey and Poe and Finn, like all together and playing off each other, kind of for the first time because uh, they actually haven't really been all together until this movie. Rey only met Poe at the very end of the last movie, so this new dynamic, it really hasn't been explored until this movie. So we get to see it, and we get a lot of fun interactions between those characters, as well as Chewbacca and 3PO, some of the old characters that are still a part of the regular cast. And there was a few like really good geek out moments in it. In fact, there's a few moments where I remember watching the last one, The Last Jedi, and thinking, wouldn't it be cool if this happened and it didn't happen in The Last Jedi? But a couple of those things I was thinking about for The Last Jedi happened in The Rise of Skywalker, so I thought that was really cool. There's a surprise cameo that was great. I won't spoil it. It's going to be a non-spoiler review, so I won't be spoiling it. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. It was a blast. Um, I really have to praise this as a Star Wars movie on its own. Though, I have a little bit of mixed feelings about not so much this movie on its own, but by what this movie means for the sequel trilogy. Because this completes the sequel trilogy. And as a whole, the sequel trilogy, now I know all three parts of it, it feels a little less cohesive than it probably should. It feels a little clumsy in the way it flows together, and it's pretty well known that they didn't have the story all planned out when they started. That they kind of made the story up as they went one movie at a time, and that's now that the movie is done. I mean, the trilogy is done. Yeah, that's kind of apparent. Unfortunately, like each chapter in the trilogy is great as a Star Wars movie on its own. It's fantastic. I'm not to say that it's going to hold up as well as the original trilogy, because really nothing can hold a candle to the original trilogy. But I mean, still, these have been fantastic, fun, wonderful Star Wars adventures. But you put them all together, they don't really flow as well with each other as well as they should. And I think it has to do with, well, there was a big reveal about Rey's parents in The Last Jedi. So if you've seen The Last Jedi, you know what that was. It is retconned, and they try to make it seem like that they're just taking information that was given in The Last Jedi and just expanding on it. But no, really, there were details given in The Last Jedi that are just contradicted here. So yeah, it's a retcon. It is. Which is not to say it's bad. I mean, it still ends up being a good story, a story that more or less kind of works. It just doesn't flow with the as a trilogy. The trilogy, when looked at as one story as a whole, just is clumsy and disjointed. It just doesn't flow. Um, and like, partly because the big emotional reveal, was the one in The Last Jedi. The reveal that is actually ends up being true by the end of the um, uh, Rise of Skywalker. That is, it's. I will say this: it is one of the theories that's been going around. One of the theories about Rey's parents that's been going around is what they ended up going with, and so when they reveal that, it's not a big reveal moment. It doesn't feel like it's a big reveal moment. So it just feels like a, oh, okay, so they're going with that theory. Okay. Um, but they still do. They go in they surprise me a little bit. They take the story in a direction where I kind of thought they had burned that bridge. There's a place where they take the characters where I kind of think they had burned the bridge already, but they managed to take it in that direction where I thought they really narratively couldn't take it. They managed to do it and make it work. Um, so so I wasn't expecting them to go that way. So it's nice to that I can't predict everything that is going to happen. So I like it when I like to theorize about these movies because it's fun, but I also like when I'm wrong when they find ways to surprise me, and they did do that. Um, a lot of the stuff in the Last Jedi, a lot of the plot of the Last Jedi, still sticks and is referred to. That hasn't been retconned um, so much, but it does seem like the character development that we saw in the Last Jedi. Excuse me. It does seem like the character development was kind of pushed aside, kind of forgotten. They kind of hit the reset button on the characters and kind of have them more or less where they were at the beginning of The Last Jedi instead of at the end. Um, so, yeah, and the thing is that it wasn't a cohesive vision to begin with. It was very reactionary the way they made these movies, the way they wrote these movies. The Force Awakens comes out, and people love it, but they do say, but there's one major complaint about it, and that's that it's like kind of like a rehash of A New Hope. It's kind of like very much the same story, just in a different way. And so for The Last Jedi, it comes out and it's kind of a reaction to that, and they kind of, although it does mirror Empire Strikes Back quite a bit, they also uh, take the story and into like completely unexpected directions. Like they take what was set up in the Force Awakens and use that as like a red herring. They use that as you setting up your expectations so that they can subvert it. So they said to set up a twist rather than to set up what it seems to be setting up. And they do that a lot in The Last Jedi, and I think that's probably because they didn't want it to seem like a rehash. But then fans complained about that. They thought it took it in too far of a different direction. And they didn't like where they went with it. So for this movie, they discarded a lot of that. They just kind of retconned and hit the reset button on a lot of that. I mean, I love every one of these movies. I loved each and every one of them. All three of them were fantastic movies. They were fun. I will watch them over and over again. But when you put them all together as a whole, because they were so reactionary, because they didn't start out with a vision and just kind of like reacted to just what the fans were saying every time, it ends up being not as polished a finished product as it could have been. So I'm as a so the trilogy as a whole suffers a little bit, but again, you take Rise of Skywalker on its own. I mean, there's no way I'm not recommending this. Was awesome. So take that for what it's worth. So for the letter grade, I'm still gonna give it an A. I'm gonna give the Rise of Skywalker an A. I mean, like maybe it could have gotten an A plus. Like maybe each of these movies in the trilogy could maybe get an A plus, except for the fact that they don't work as well as a trilogy as they should. But on their own, they're each like A quality movies. So, well, take that for what it's worth. So if you haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker, and the theater I was in was like about half full, so I think it's not. I haven't heard what the box office results are coming in, but it does seem like it's not the sellout that like The Force Awakens was, or like The Last Jedi was at the beginning. So, and I mean, often it's times like when there is a controversy or something over a previous film, the next film in the series is the one that ends up suffering. That may be happening here, I don't know. But, I mean, it's worth seeing. I mean, if you are or even a casual Star Wars fan, it's fun. It's classic Star Wars storytelling. It's It's that space adventure. It's that Flash Gordon thing that we all know and love. So I'm definitely recommending it. So if you're on the fence about going out to see it, I would say go see it. All right, like, comment, subscribe, and that's a wrap.